So I'm Sebastian Zoellner. I'm the chair of the PhD admissions committee. Have been a professor in this department since 2005, so pretty much forever. My work is in statistical genetics. I'm also, that's sort of my general range here.
Hi everyone, I'm Mousumi Banerjee. I'm a research professor in the department. I serve as chair of the Master's Admissions Committee. I've been here since 2003, so again, like long timers. My areas of research are predictive modeling, causal inference, correlated data, and I work primarily in the areas of cancer and pediatric heart disease. What else? Oh, I did my bachelor's and master's in statistics from the Indian Statistical Institute in Kolkata, India, and then came here to do my PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Feels like a long time back. We are going to talk about the admissions process, as Sebastian mentioned, we have two committees, the Master's Admissions Committee and the PhD Admissions Committee that Sebastian chairs. We sort of like, the Master's Admission Committee is a 7-member committee. We meet every week during the first 3-4 months of the process. And then we come together periodically, the two committees, to discuss applicants. So the degrees offered, we offer a Master of Science in Biostatistics, a Master of Science in Health Data Science. You heard a little bit about the MS in Health Data Science from my colleague Huijian. We also have an accelerated Master of Science in Biostatistics program, and then of course the doctoral program in biostatistics. So let me talk about the MS program first. As I mentioned, we have a very growing and vibrant program in Masters in Biostatistics, and we have a relatively newer program in Health Data Science, but that has also been growing and is becoming very popular with our applicants. Both of them are 20-month programs and essentially requires you to complete 48 credit hours. Most of these credit hours come from courses in biostatistics, so 36 or more credit hours taken from biostatistics courses, and you all heard from the students that there's a core course sequence that all master's students have to take, 601, 602 in the theory, and 650, 651, and 653 in the applied core sequence. I teach 650, the course on linear regression, which is the first course in the applied sequence. And as again you heard from our students, that we are considered generally a very theoretical department. So even in the applied sequence courses, there is a very strong emphasis on theory, and I would say that it's a very healthy balance between theory and applications. So your 36 credit hours are going to come from biostatistics, 3 credit hours from epidemiology, and 1 credit hour in public health, and the rest of the classes you basically can take as electives. You can take courses that the biostat department offers. You can take courses on computational methods, big data, or you could do a minor. And typically our students choose minors from public health, epi, genetics, and so on. The difference between these two programs, biostatistics, MS, and health data science, there's quite a large overlap between core courses that students in each of these programs have to take. But the focus on the biostatistics MS program is rigorous, comprehensive, and in-depth training in biostatistics. In contrast, there is in the health data science program, there is a focus on enhanced learning in computational and data analytic methods. And so students end up still taking the fundamental biostatistical curriculum, but there is an emphasis on the analysis of big data, medical and public health data. So students end up taking a lot of courses on big data, computing, computational skills, machine learning, and so on. In contrast, in the biostatistics MS program, we want students to have a deeper dive into advanced statistical models, such as we can take electives on longitudinal data analysis. So 653, which is our course on longitudinal data analysis methods, mixed models, is a required course for students in the Biostat MS program, but not in the health data science program. Students that are enrolled and who do well in our program and in our MS Biostatistics program, they are encouraged, and often they go into our PhD program. So typically that's sort of the career trajectory for students in the Biostat MS program. In contrast, for the health data science program, generally, again, it doesn't have to be, the PhD option is still open, but generally that is for students for whom, the MS in health data science is their final degree and they would like to go into the workforce at least for a few years, and maybe then either consider coming back to PhD or, sort of use that as their terminal degree. But as I mentioned, there is still a lot of overlap in the curriculum, especially related to the fundamental courses in biostatistics, like inference and methodology. What about the accelerated MS program in biostatistics? Again, this is a new program, and this is only offered for our University of Michigan students in math and statistics programs. So this is a 3 + 1 + 1 year program. And the way it works is the first 3 years, years 1 to 3, you are, like your freshman to junior year, you are in your traditional math stat undergrad. And you apply in your junior year to the accelerated MS program. If you are accepted, then year 4, which is your senior year in undergrad, you begin taking master's classes with us in our department. So that year 4, the senior year of undergraduate, sort of overlaps with the first year of being in the master's program if you are accepted in the accelerated program. And then year 5 is essentially you are a full-time grad student in our department. So that's how this program works. So it's an integrated program, and at the end of the 5th year, you basically have your undergrad degree as well as a master's in biostatistics. Application. You heard from the students a lot about the application, but here is the formal process. Our deadline is December 1st. So you have to submit an online application form with a non-refundable application fee. It is automatically waived for domestic students. Unfortunately, because of restrictions, we cannot offer this to international students. I know there were questions in the chat about that. 3 letters of recommendation. These have to be submitted online. Students often have questions about recommendation letters, and again, our student panel did a great job in kind of advising you. So, be sure to get recommendation letters from professors, work supervisors, mentors, who can objectively comment on your sort of expertise, skill set, experience, that might enhance, like, sort of that might help the committee to decide whether you are a good fit for the department, you have the right skill sets and the right background and experience. So like objective letters are always useful for us. Statement of purpose and personal statement. The personal statement is generally about a page or a page and a half. Statement of purpose, SOPs are typically longer, about a couple pages. And again, what we are looking for there is, we basically want to see, who you are, why biostatistics, and why Michigan biostatistics. So those are things that, we are looking for in your statement of purpose. The other thing that I like to say to students, and I'm sure like both myself and Sebastian would say the same thing. We read many applications. Last year we had 600 plus applications in the master's program, and in the PhD program 300 plus. So as you can imagine, like pouring over those SOPs, it's sort of you get fatigued after a while if all the SOPs look the same. So there's something that we are looking for that makes you stand out, makes you unique. And so talk about, like, sometimes people talk about their life stories that brought them to biostatistics, but something that makes you sort of unique. And talk about, like, the why biostatistics, why Michigan is a very important component. Official transcripts, TOEFL or IELTS course, these are required for international students whose first language is not English and who did not earn a degree from an English-speaking institution. We do not, like Michigan Public Health, we do not require, and we actually do not review GRE scores. Master's prereqs. You heard from the student panel, and I want to emphasize that these prereqs are critical for you to survive and succeed in our program. I might sound kind of, I don't know, nasty when I say survive, but really this is for your benefit. 3 semesters of calculus, including multivariable calculus, and I thought, like, Hannah and you sort of like really emphasize the importance of the prereqs. It's not just enough to have a check mark. Okay, I did take that class, but the rigor of the program requires you to have these prereqs, and we do not accept online classes. This is another question that I frequently get. We require residential courses, 3 semesters of calculus, including multivariable calculus, 1 semester of matrix or linear algebra, and an introductory course in statistics or biostatistics. There are other useful courses people might bring to the table, like advanced calculus, real analysis, other math and stats courses, programming, but these are not required. Our prereqs are the ones that you have to be extremely careful about, and make sure that you have done a diligent job of kind of meeting those requirements.
Can I add something real quick?
Sure.
And if it's been a while that you've done Calc 3 and you haven't touched it in like 5 years or something, you might want to do something to renew it before you come here, right? Obviously, 5-year-old Calc 3 grade is good enough to be accepted. But if you think you're rusty, brush off some of that rust. Because it is really important.
Yeah, and again, as Sebastian mentioned, that it's extremely important. And again, I serve as chair of the MS committee, so I'm looking at your files, and then I see you guys in the first semester of the program. So I sort of see from both sides, and it's extremely important to come with this, prereqs and again, to rusty brush them up, because otherwise, as I say, that it's really a struggle. Where do our students come from? In the Biostat MS program, largely from undergrads in statistics, math, biostatistics, applied math, data science, but we also have a lot of students coming with biology background, as long as you meet those prereq criteria. We also get students from psychology, ecology, some health majors, medical science. We also have students that come from like business. So very, very diverse backgrounds. And that's the strength of our program. I think that's good. Same with the health data science. We get majority of our students from data science programs, again quantitative programs like stats, applied math, financial math, but also from the bio fields. We have had students also apply to us from econ. Essentially, both our masters in biostat and health data science are very, very diverse programs. So I'll sort of have Sebastian talk to you about the PhD, and then we'll talk about funding.
And plenty of questions. Yeah, the one thing I forgot to add earlier in my introduction is, as you can maybe tell from my accent, I'm from Germany. I did all my schoolwork in Germany. I did a master's in math and a PhD in biology. So I actually have no statistics degree, but that doesn't seem to stop me. Okay, so to give you a rough overview of the PhD program, after you have a master's in biostatistics, typically takes 3 to 4 years. If you come in with only a bachelor or not enough background knowledge in statistics, you basically have to do the master's program before, so that adds another 2 years to take you to 5 to 6 years post-bachelor. That means typically after the master's there's 1 more year of coursework, which includes, if you haven't done it at this point, real analysis, a 2-course program in statistical inference, stochastic processes, and typically additional electives worth another 9 credit hours. So it's a good year of coursework. Typically before you do all of that already, you do your qualifying exam, and during the entire process you're working on your dissertation. And here I'm going to talk mostly about how you get to that point, not so much what happens after. The application is very similar to the master's applications. Actually, this is exactly the same slide. Yeah, I'm going to talk about what's important in a second. The prerequisites are also very similar if you're coming in with a bachelor, right? We want very strong candidates. We're probably going to want a little bit more math background than for a master's application, because we kind of need to predict that you're going to be successful in the PhD, not only the master's program, and more data is good there. As I mentioned before, these are all things that we from experience know you will need to survive. If we go back and to triage or try to understand why people failed out of the program, it is often that their Calc 3, I have a specific case, the teacher almost never showed up, he just gave everybody an A or an A-. The student could not do our program because he had practically had no Calc 3, right? Was on his transcript, but that didn't help him with doing the actual work, right? So think about that this is really stuff you need to know, and we only have the prerequisites here because we know you need it, not because we want to set hoops or bars or anything up for you to jump over. What we have done in the past is we have admitted students that looked really exciting, but maybe did not have Calc 3 yet. We've given them a conditional admit, because you can do Calc 3 at a community college over the summer, and we're saying, we love your application, your statement of purpose is great, your letters are awesome, you need Calc 3 to succeed here. If you do Calc 3 over the summer with, typically we say B+ or better, we'd love to have you in the fall, or in your last semester at school, right? So that can happen. Similarly, if you're planning to take one of the prerequisites in your last semester in college, you can say, I don't have Calc 3 yet, because I decided late that that's the direction I want to go in. I will take it in my last semester, then we might admit you conditional on your grade in that Calc 3 class.
Can I add one comment
Sure.
there? So while that is possible, that let's say you don't have one prereq, and you either take it in the last semester or in summer, we can give you conditional admission. But there are times when people come with like transcripts that were, virtually you have skipped Calc 2, Calc 3 and linear algebra. So you cannot get conditional admits. And it is to your benefit to not come into a program where you are trying to cram 3 prereqs in the last semester. So you didn't really have, knowledge coursework to develop you through the curriculum, your undergraduate curriculum. So that is going to be slippery. If you try to cram linear algebra, basic stats, all in the last summer before joining, or the multivariable calculus, that doesn't work. So I'm just going to be very blunt about it.
And just one thing I'm trying to say here. What we are trying to do in the admissions committee is we're trying to have a crystal ball to predict if this is a good fit for you. If this is a good fit for you, we'd love to admit you. Problem is we have very limited data, right? Some of the best data we have is your math grades. If we don't have the math grades, the cost for you in coming and not succeeding are huge. The cost for you not coming, doing something else might be minimal. So if we are not sure, we think we're doing you a favor and us a favor if we're saying maybe not this year, right? So that is always our motivation here. Okay, to continue, if some people go into the PhD after a master's, for that to work, you basically have to have something of a master's that's very similar to our PhD, to our master's, right? So you have to have something that's similar to 601, 602, similar to the applied series, and similar to 699. All of this must have been covered by your program wherever you did your master's. Otherwise, we'll put you in the master's, potentially only a single year, but otherwise you will have to do at least part of the master's sequence. On top of that, we typically want you to have the real analysis already, because you want to be done within a year. And real analysis is a prerequisite to some of the other courses you do in the PhD. And so that is necessary for you to move on. Who goes directly into the PhD? It's a very similar word cloud to the one that you've seen before, maybe with math being even stronger here. And again, the reason is simply we need to be really certain that you can succeed in that, and having one of the best predictors for success is if you've already done it successfully elsewhere, right? This is how this is set up. To give some tips about the applications. One of the very cool things about our applications department is your application will at the very least be seen by 2 people. By one of the 2 of us and 1 other faculty. Typically your application will be seen by 3 people. All of us have different ideas what makes a good application. So you get the average of those three opinions. Me personally, I care a lot about the letters of support. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about those. As I said before, it is important to get letter writers who actually can say something useful, right? Who can comment on your math, statistical, computing, research ability. A letter writer that tells us that you're a great person is not that useful. Doesn't really tell us anything, right? It's great to know that you're a good person, but we typically assume that from people who apply. One thing that's worth remembering, as you heard earlier, send them information beforehand that you're going to ask them for a letter. It is absolutely fair to ask a letter writer, do you think you can write me a strong, detailed letter? Because what can happen is that you've been in a 100 people math class, you got an A, and the letter will say, this was a top 20% student in my math class, she got an A, or he got an A. That doesn't help us. The A is already in the transcript. Right? That does not give us any additional information. If the letter writer can say, she asked a lot of, but if the same faculty remembers you and says, he or she asked a lot of good questions, that becomes stronger, right? So asking your and that does not apply to our programs, it applies to any application. Asking them, do you think you can write me a strong detailed letter? You can't see the letter, but you can ask if they can do that. And if they say, I'm not so sure, we haven't interacted much, then maybe see if there's another person who might be a better choice for you, right? Write your statements, write them clearly and well. If there's too much AI, it will become incredibly bland. I mean, there's nothing wrong with putting it into ChatGPT to see if there's a couple of things that can be phrased better, or getting ChatGPT write you the very first draft and then totally rewrite it. But some people don't write well if they start with an empty page. But ChatGPT makes it bland. Bland is bad, right? So be very careful about how much you use that tool. As we said before, if you can convince us that biostatistics is something that is your passion, that is particularly important for the PhD, right? Because the PhD has phases where it's really only where you have much less structure, where you're only doing research, and where it has to be your passion that drives you forward. So we want to see that. Yeah. One other thing that is worth thinking about in your letters is if there is a weakness in your CV that you know about, but that has a good reason, right? You might want to have something in your personal statement. This particular year was bad because I had a critical death in my family, right? You look at it differently than if there's just suddenly a year with a horrible GPA and there we go, what's going on here, right? So that might be worth, might be not worth it, depending if you have a good explanation of it. Right, these are the numbers that we've talked about already. Last year we had 630 master's applications and 350 PhD applications. Of that, we had about 100 new master's students and 26 new PhDs. We made substantially more offers than PhDs. Many people who we admit into our PhD get admitted to many other good PhD programs and have a broad choice. So it's not as exclusive as it looks here. Yeah, as one other thing that's worth pointing out, all our PhD students are funded. PhD offer comes with an offer of 3 years of funding, assuming good progress on your degree. The majority of them are funded as research assistants, as GSRAs, on some faculty's project. But a meaningful number are also funded as graduate student instructors. Typically what happens is a student, as they come in and has limited skills, they often get funded as a teaching assistant the first year. And as they have taken more courses, they get moved into a GSRA position. So nobody's a teaching assistant the entire time here. It's typically a year to develop ability and then move into other programs. We have right now we have 11 students who are funded on either the Genome Science training program or the Cancer Biostatistics training program, or some funding through the university like the Regents program or Rock and Merit Fellowship. Those students are supported really only to do their research work and to do their classwork. On addition, and I think this applies only to master students, we give out tuition awards where we don't give you a full ride. We take over 25, 50%, and in some very rare cases, even your full tuition in order to make it easier for you to come. Again, that comes only with the stipulation that you come and take the courses. But it's, of course, it doesn't cover.
Can I add?
Absolutely.
So, typically, for our master students, we offer very few what are called fully funded positions, meaning that the funding that comes through GSRA or GSI. But it's not unlikely that you might be a candidate for the full funding. It's very few, proportionately. The mechanism that is more common for funding in the master's program is through these tuition awards, and as was mentioned, that we offer the 25% tuition awards. We generally try not to. I mean, in the past we have had, but with limited success. So in the most recent past, we have only given tuition offers at 50% and 100% rates. So these are options that are available for our master students, and a lot of students kind of like, we make many of these offers, and many of our current cohort are taking advantage of this tuition award. So this is something that I think particularly for the master students, keep in mind that this is a funding resource that is available.
And so the one thing I've slightly implied, but I want to make very clear, GSRA and GSI offers are real jobs, right? You're given a 20-hour job that will also pay your tuition, right? You pay for the 20 hours of work you're doing in addition to all your normal schoolwork. But that will take care of your tuition, and that will obviously also allow you to have money to live off. Right? But there's substantial additional work both with the GSRA position and with the GSI position beyond your normal schoolwork. Yeah, as I said, the additional funding options we have are the training grants. I'm going to talk about the genome science training program first. Training grants are funded by the US government, and as such, they are only available to either citizens or green card holders. So they're not available for international students. The genome science training program is an interdisciplinary program between the Department of Biostatistics, genetics and epidemiology. It is a program that's now in its 30th year. We have just submitted renewal of the program, so we hope we'll be able to offer that for another 5 years. It supports 13 doctoral students, typically doctoral students, sometimes master students, but only master students who have a very clear direction towards the PhD. It has on the program of 55 faculty in 11 departments, 14 of them on biostatistics. So the students that are supported by it are also across all of these departments, and actually additional departments as well. Right now we have students in ecology and evolutionary biology and in computer science supported by this grant. But there's typically 4 or 5 students out of biostatistics who are supported by this grant. But this is truly interdisciplinary, which means we are looking for people who have both math and biology. In the best case, major in one of the areas, minor in the other areas. Which means you need to actually have real biology on your transcript to be eligible for this grant. I'm heavily involved in this grant, so obviously I'm biased here, but I think it has a lot of nice features. We often invite, for example, students to come out early, start in August rather than September, so that they have a running start on their research analysis and don't have to get hit by everything all at once. There's a seminar series and a journal club. We're also doing an annual retreat where we cover areas that are not directly part of the curriculum. Traditionally, one of the very cool things, for example, we've done is we've invited somebody from the NIH out and run a mock study section so that you get to see what grant review in the real world actually looks like. The other training program that we have that I know a little bit less about, so might get into trouble if I say something wrong, is the Cancer Biostatistics Training Program, which is for interest in cancer research, supports 5 students. It's also funded by the NIH. Right now there are 12 biostatistics faculty involved, most of which you've actually seen already. The requirement here are biostatistics courseworks plus learning about cancer, right? There's an expanded cancer-based cognate and a seminar, and you have to do research experience. You have to do research in the area. It is also a very strong program because, as you know, our cancer center here is very strong, and you have direct link with applied scientists, and so you get direct exposure to how cancer research happens. Nonetheless, this is not as much of an interdisciplinary program. Right here, we're looking for strong statisticians who have interest in cancer, not necessarily for cutting across multiple disciplines. Okay, so to give you a rough idea what the admissions timeline looks like, As you might already know, the deadline is December 1st. Funding decisions and mostly admissions decisions pretty much start the moment we get finished files. But we're trying to be done with all funding and admissions decisions by mid-February, so that you get your information from us as fast as possible. On March 15th, we're going to have Admitted Students Day, where all students who have been accepted are invited to come back, and we're going to talk. We're then going to try to convince you that this is the place you should go. As I mentioned before, many students that get admitted typically have multiple opportunities, and one of the things, I think one of the students said it earlier also, this is the place where I advise every student to start building your cohort. If you are in this circle and are admitted to multiple programs, you will see the same faces at multiple of these Admitted Students Days. Get to know those people. Those are going to be your peers. And interacting with those is going to be really helpful for you for both your time as a student and potentially afterwards. By April 15th, you will have to make up your mind, and then we will start to figure out how to match what you want to do if you're a funded student with the funds we have available, and give that information to you. And in late August, you hopefully start here.
So I want to add, for the master's admissions, for the admissions part, we generally kind of do our decisions on a rolling basis. So you might be notified earlier than February whether you have been admitted to the program or not. The funding decisions, we don't let you know till we have our big funding meeting, and that's usually a combined meeting between the master's and the PhD committee. So you might know about the admission decision sooner if you have, submitted your application well in advance of the December 1st deadline.
Yeah.
Or early on.
Yeah, and because every PhD admission comes with funding, you're not going to learn about this until we know about how much money we have and who we can give it to, right? So even though we know we have a pretty good idea that we probably want you, it's very unlikely that you hear from the PhD committee before funding decisions are made. There's one thing that wasn't on the slides, and so I forgot to mention it until now. What happens quite frequently is that we look in the PhD committee at a file and say, this is an awesome applicant, but there's not enough math there that we think a 5-year commitment is the right choice right now. Right? It's a person who typically comes out of a bachelor, has the prerequisites, has done great in the prerequisites, but that's exactly all the math they have. There's no really strong letter from a math prof. Then we go, 5-year commitment feels like a lot, but they would be awesome in the master's program. So there is a checkbox on your application. If you're not admitted to the PhD program, do you want to be considered for the master's program? If that box is checked, I will give that file and add it to the big pile of work that Mousumi already has. And the master's committee will look at that and decide whether or not to admit you to the master's program. And typically they do, right? If that is something you're interested in. And as I mentioned before, many of our PhD students come out of our own master's program. So in many situations, you might just do the master's program and then the PhD, and you'll be done with the same degree in the same amount of time. Right? If you think, I want a PhD or bust, then please check that box. Or don't check that box. I don't know. I don't remember if it's phrased positively or negatively. Check the box appropriately, and we will honor that as well.
Yeah, and yes, I want to also emphasize that point. So please do check that box. I think it asks, do you wish to be considered for MS?
Okay.
So please check that box, because that allows, as Sebastian said, allows him to send it to me for consideration of our committee. And I'm going to say, like, the positive thing about it, we have had students who were sent from the PhD committee to us, very strong applicants, and we ended up admitting them to the master's program with full funding. Okay.
So that can happen.
that can happen. Any questions for us? I think that this is the last slide.
Yeah, so I think it's clear that there's, at least indicated so far, maybe a preference for people coming into the PhD program from the master's program. Is that out of line?
No.
Yeah, I don't think I would say there's a preference, but definitely it's a very common pathway for our PhD cohort.
So I would phrase it differently. As I said, we're trying to figure out what is the best path for you. If you have a master's in biostatistics, we have more data. If you don't have a master's in biostatistics, we have to guess from your undergraduate performance how well will you do in grad school. And as you've heard, it's a different world. Right? So, right, if all signs point to yes out of your undergrad degree, and there's very, very, very strong indication that you will be awesome, that will work great. If it's kind of marginal, then we will, because fundamentally, we promise to fund you 4 or 5 years, which is, I don't know the number on the top of my head, but it's many $100,000 of commitment on our side. We want to know what we're doing there. And similarly, you getting admitted to a PhD program that doesn't work for you is not great for you. Right? So we want to be sure. And it's easier to be sure if you have a master's.
Yeah,
Typically.
and the commitment is both ways,
Yeah.
right? So like you are committing 5 years of your time to a program, and if you
At least, yes.
get here and you see that this was not the right fit for you, that doesn't serve you well too. So yes, and again, I mean, just sort of from the other side,
We have students, in fact, several of them were in the panel today, who are direct admits to our PhD program from undergrad. But most likely they had undergrad in statistics or mathematics. So like we have, as Sebastian was saying, that we have enough data, sufficient data to kind of judge their math skills. So it's not a preference, but we are essentially trying to gauge whether you have the right background and the right sort of match with us.
Do you think it's important or beneficial to contact faculty before you apply to align your research efforts, or just like mark who you might want to research with on the application or in the personal statement?
go ahead.
So today is a great opportunity to talk to some faculty, right? So if you already know there's somebody here that you'd be curious about, chat with them a little bit. It'll not make much of a difference for us. If you can say in your statement, I enjoyed talking to Professor X at the Open Student Day and we had a nice conversation, that'll just show you were at the Open Student Day. It'll show us something about you. That you're driven, that you take initiative, that all of these good things, right? So all of that you can show with that. But there are many other ways to show that.
Yeah, and in your statement of purpose, even if you were not here in person today, but like you did a diligent homework of kind of going through the website, checking faculty interests, and sort of identifying maybe a couple faculty with whom you have interests that align, and you mentioned in your SOP that I can think about, or I would like to work with so and so if I were admitted to the program. So that again shows that you have done your diligent homework and you have identified people, and it also helps you answer that why Michigan biostat question.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's the committee's decision that sort of, and again, like if you write to individual faculty, oftentimes I get emails like that, and I can only say that thank you for your interest in my research, but please first apply to the program. And
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Other questions?
Yes, I also know besides maths, what other quality you're looking for strong PhD students, like income students? would the past research experiences or first also articles will help you to make sure the students stand out from the applicants?
Absolutely, right? I mean, math is important, but is among the most important things. We mostly talk about math because it's easy to measure, relatively easy to measure. Level of drive, get up and go, doing stuff by yourself is super important for a PhD. Typically, we hope for information about that in your letters. With a little, if you can display it somehow in your statement, that's great, but that's a high bar to pass. Many people just don't have the stories where they can display that, and that's also fine, right? Creativity is very useful in research. If you have papers, that shows you have done it in the past, right? So that's, again, past performance is one of the best predictors for future success, right? So absolutely, papers will be useful, but they are also not really critical, right? Because if you have, for example, a stats degree from a liberal arts college, you might have had excellent training in stats. You might have been super creative in how you did your homework, but you might have had no opportunity to do a lot of high-end research because that doesn't exist there. We'll still love you, right? There's no, just to say that again, one of the things we're trying to do very, very carefully is look at the entire application. And that's why it's, to me, so critical that multiple people look at that, because multiple people will pick up different things and will focus on different things, and then we'll have a often elaborate debate about where all the strengths and weaknesses of a candidate are. And all of these things will come up. Sorry, the guy behind. I didn't get your name.
Yeah. So I know for the deadline is for the applications are December 1st, and that's usually before fall grades are released. Are we required as soon as fall grades are released to send them, or should we not?
If we want them, we'll ask you. But for some cases, right, if, for example, you're just now taking Calc 3, to come back to that, we will, with 100% certainty, ask you about your Calc 3 grade, because that will be critical. If you have done all of that stuff, whatever, some more advanced math in your first 3 years, it doesn't really matter that much for us if your advanced differential equations class is a B or an A, if you already have 3 or 4 A's in really advanced math classes before that. Right? So again, if we need the information, we'll ask. In many cases, we don't need it because there's enough information in the rest of your transcripts.
I wanted to add something to the previous question. So, as Sebastian mentioned, that if you have taken classes, if you went to a liberal arts college, you took statistics classes, and your only exposure to research was through class projects, right? So there, it is very important, that's why I was stressing objective letters. It's very important for you to get letters from the professor with whom you kind of did a research project within class context to kind of comment on that, your creativity, your sort of, kind of being a team player, or you're being kind of the person who really shaped the project, even if it was a team effort. So all of those components, if your professor speaks to, then that is what is useful data information for us. Sometimes, and quite a lot, we also see students may have done some volunteer research work as part of a summer. It could be like a small summer project that kind of led to a paper where they're one of the authors. Even there, I think, getting a letter from whoever was the PI or the senior author on the project and comment on those skills as part of the research group or as part of the research publication, that helps. So there are different elements, and there's kind of various opportunities in which you can gather information about those elements. Keep that in mind. Okay.
Sort of just to re-emphasize what Mousumi just said, if you have a paper and particularly if you're not the first author in it, it is very hard for us to know what your contribution was. Right? Your contribution can have been, I'm overstating things a little bit, cleaning, making sure the lab bench was always ready for work for everybody on there. That doesn't help us at all, right? So in that case, you really want a letter from the PI or from somebody who can really talk about your performance in that project, even though you're an author. If it's a first author paper, I'd still do it because that's going to be an awesome letter, right? But there we have at least some idea that you probably did an important part of the work because otherwise you wouldn't be first author on the paper. But right, publications are good, but they typically should be backed up by the letters as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, so pretty much what you are saying that you also looking for like the potential PhD student to do the research like by him or herself, right? So we want to sure like they can do it.
Not by not by themselves.
I mean, like still they want like to be in the lab, right? But they have ability to find problem, know the way to do it.
Very few people do. No, what I'm looking for is that I'm giving you the problem. You can identify the next small step that will get you a tiny bit closer to the solution. We talk about the whole aspect of the problem. We talk about different potential steps. You identify one small step, figure out how can I do that one small step, and don't need, right, that at that level, I want you to be independent. I don't want you to do the whole thing by yourself and come back 9 months later and I have to tell you, yeah, no, you started here with a mistake at the very beginning. Right? That is not a good idea. But sort of from week to week, the goal is that I don't have to give you every step that you do, but that you figure out the next step and do it, and right? And fundamentally, what we're trying in the PhD is to go from week to week to 2 months to month. If you can do a research project, find the question, do it, and come back with a final result to us, then you don't need to be here. That's the end product of a PhD.
How do you treat recommendation letters like from industry versus maybe from academia?
Again, it's objective assessment of your strengths, your training in quantitative areas, training and background, and I mean, I cannot emphasize this more. And this is something that we see with our international applicants more so than our domestic applicants, where the letters are very generic, like, like this person is a nice person to interact with, talk to, comes to class regularly, and those things are useless. So even doesn't matter if it's someone from industry or academia, someone who can objectively write about your strengths. Sometimes I have seen letters where the letter writers talked about a weakness, but then kind of like had such comments like, okay, maybe if there is one area that this person could improve on is such and such, but this is how he or she kind of overcame, that becomes a strength then. So like someone who has that knowledge about your kind of like, and can objectively measure your skill sets, your even sometimes weaknesses are made into strengths. So that's the letter we want. Doesn't matter if it's coming from academia or industry. At least not for us.
I think for industry, the problem is I'm not sure what language that person speaks, right? There are some aspects that are just different in industry, but industry, being on time, being fast with your results is a much higher priority than it is for academic research. Academic research, 5% error, but I'm fast is worse than no error, but I'm slow. In industry, it's often different. 5% error we can live with as long as we're fast, right? So it's a little bit different. We're not speaking. If you get a letter from industry, I would advise that the person who writes the letter is clearer about who they are and what their credentials are, right? Because if that says professor for statistics, Stanford, I don't even need to know the person. I have a rough idea who that person is, right? If it's managing director for something or other at The GSK, I have no idea. That could be a person with absolutely no personal stats experience. And it is often relatively easy to impress people who don't know stats with very simple stuff. And that doesn't help us, right? Right, so the person needs to set himself up, and all the strength that I've talked about, if he can talk to those strengths, that is awesome. I would advise against getting all your letters from industry, even if you've been out of the school for a while. I would advise to try to reach back to somebody from college and who might remember you, and get at least one letter from an academic source.
Yeah,
Other
I
questions?
would
No
just,
questions from over here. Let me go over here.
I would just add one thing about the industry aspect is, I kind of differ slightly from Sebastian on that note. It's kind of recognition of, remember that what we are sort of, when we are looking at your application, we are looking at kind of many aspects, right? So the letter writer should again be able to objectively comment on your background and training in quantitative areas. If it's a person who cannot assess or cannot, judge you on those standards, then that would not be a useful letter. But otherwise, I'm happy.
That was pretty much the point I was trying to make. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Are they so good at asking questions for you? Oh, excellent. Any other questions?
What is like the most important key thing in our application for you to?
There is no most important key thing. You will have different faculty have different things. People joke about me that I care about your real analysis grade. I find your real analysis grade a pretty solid predictor for your overall math ability. We have other people in the community couldn't care less. Right? We had people, I don't think we have a committee this year, who care about which school your undergrad is. Right? Other people couldn't care less, right? So there's really, and I think that is critical for a holistic evaluation anywhere, because people bring those biases, and we now know these biases because we've argued with people over cases over the last 10 years, and they come out. But that's why you have 5 people, everyone with their own biases, and you kind of hope it gets as unbiased as possible when you average it out.
Yeah, and I was going to say exactly the same thing. That's why we have 7 people in the committee. And, collectively, we hope that we have an unbiased voice. I give a lot of importance to your prereqs, because I really think that's critical. And I have to say, I am biased about your undergraduate institution, because if I know the institution and the program well, then I am more sort of, confident about the depth of your training. But as Sebastian said, there might be people who would care less. And having like a 7-member or a 5-member committee, that's where we sort of average out.
Yeah. Excellent. If you have questions you didn't feel comfortable for whatever reason asking, just find us, and we'll be at the lunch.